Inside the Afrikaner Broederbond.
A real peek behind the curtain of power. This book, it isn't just about laws and elections, it's about the whispers, the backroom deals, the influence most people never even see, how power really works.
Exactly, and that's what we're here to uncover. So for our listeners, today's deep dive takes us into the world of the Afrikaner Broederbond. Who were these guys, and how do they become so powerful they could shape a nation in secret?
Well, the name itself, Afrikaner Broederbond, it just means Afrikaner Brotherhood, right? But this was no after-work social club. Founded in 1918, this group, they were obsessed with secrecy. We're talking code names, hidden meeting places.
Sounds serious.
Dead serious. Their own wives often had no clue what they were really up to.
Yeah. Okay, so not your average book club then.
Yeah.
But why all the cloak and dagger? What was the point of all this secrecy?
Because secrecy was the key to their strategy. It let them control the narrative. They could deny involvement. They could operate with a level of deniability that's impossible when you're out in the open. The less the public knew, the more effectively they could pull the strings.
So it's not just who the Broederbonds were, but where they were within South African society, right?
Exactly. They were strategic about it, placing their members in key positions everywhere. Government, education, even the church.
Wow.
This network, it extended way beyond their numbers, almost like a web stretching across the entire country.
It's like something out of a political thriller. But to get their motives, we need to rewind a bit. This is post-Boer War South Africa, am I right? A time when Afrikaners were feeling increasingly marginalized.
Yes, and the Broederbond, they were smart. They tapped into that feeling. They weaponized Afrikaner nationalism, used it to unify people. But, and this is important, their version of nationalism, it wasn't harmless. They weren't just celebrating their heritage. They were promoting something far more dangerous, this idea of Afrikaner superiority.
Afrikaner superiority. How did they justify that? What was their reasoning?
And this is where it gets really unsettling. They believed they were chosen by God to lead South Africa.
Chosen by God.
And it gets worse. They weren't alone in this belief. The Broederbond had deep, deep ties to the Dutch Reformed Church. This was a powerful institution in the Afrikaner community, huge influence.
So the church basically legitimized their political agenda.
In a chilling way, yes. Just imagine the impact of the church declaring apartheid, this brutal system, as God's plan. This wasn't just politics. This was about shaping people's beliefs, using religion to justify their actions and silence anyone who disagreed.
That's a chilling thought, that the Broederbond could manipulate faith to control the narrative, to justify oppression. It speaks to the power of belief, but also how easily it can be twisted.
And this wasn't a one-time thing. The Broederbond, they went to great lengths to control the narrative in every aspect of life in South Africa.
So we've talked about this obsession with secrecy, with being behind the scenes, and about how they strategically place themselves within South African society. But how did they actually control the narrative? What were their methods?
Well, they understood something really important. Whoever controls the information controls how people see things.
Powerful.
Incredibly. And one of their main tactics, it was infiltrating the media.
The media.
We're not just talking a few journalists who were sympathetic. Oh, no. They had members in all the top spots. Newspapers, radio, even, back then it was just starting television.
So they were literally shaping the news, what people saw, how they saw it.
Exactly. They could downplay the awful things about apartheid, make their opponents look bad, present this whole clean version of things.
The sanitized versions.
And it wasn't just the news either. They had huge influence over education, too.
Education, right.
Think about it. Members who were teachers, writing the textbooks, even university professors.
So generations of South African kids learning a version of history written by the Broederbond.
A version that said, yeah, Afrikaner superiority, that's the way it should be.
Wow. By controlling information from a young age, shaping those perceptions, they could be sure that future generations would keep supporting their plans.
Exactly.
It's a scary thought, really, even if it's morally, obviously, completely wrong. But it wasn't just about propaganda and, thought control, was it? They used other methods to stay in power, too.
Right. Oh, absolutely. They liked the shadows, but they weren't afraid to use force if they needed to. They were a big part of pushing through those really harsh laws, the ones designed to crush any opposition.
Like what? Can you give us an example?
The Suppression of Communism Act of 1950. That's a big one.
Okay.
Now, the name, it's misleading. They used that law to target Any group, any person that they saw as a threat, anyone who even questioned apartheid questioned their authority.
So dissent, disagreeing was against the law.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
And they had a lot of economic power, too, use their influence to steer money opportunities towards Afrikaners. Meanwhile, black South Africans shut out.
It sounds like they controlled it all. Every part of life in South Africa shaped to fit their worldview.
Their very narrow, very discriminatory worldview.
But it couldn't last, right? What brought down the Broederbond in the end? It's a story of power and manipulation, creating a system that only helps a select few while hurting so many others.